All right. So hello, my name is Melanie Michelson. I'm the Bastrop County 4-H agent, and I am here to talk to you about our favorite and most dreaded 4-H subject, the record books. Just a heads up in the background, it's almost feeding time for our animals at home, so you may hear them get really excited and make some noises whenever Casey comes down to help with that. That being said, see if I can get my PowerPoint to cooperate. There we go. So tonight we're going to kind of go over some of the record book categories, some of the dates that y'all need to pay attention to, about when judging is going to happen. We'll talk a little bit about the purpose and objective of record books, some of the steps to the record keeping process. We're going to go through the record book itself from cover to cover. We'll talk about some general tips and guidelines, kind of what judges are given to evaluate your record books at the judging for county, district, and state level. And then we'll talk about kind of how those record books tie into some of the awards and scholarship and even college applications. And then we'll have some specific time set aside for questions at the end. Y'all are also welcome to either unmute yourselves or type questions into the chat as we go along. Okay. So currently there are 25 record book categories. The only thing that has changed from the past couple of years to this year are a couple of titles, and those are marked in yellow. The agricultural area changed to animal agricultural, and it encompasses some of the livestock judging, meat science, and a couple of other projects. And then the citizenship and civic education project had community service added to it specifically. And then the theater and performance arts has now changed to visual and performance arts. But for the most part, all of the other main project areas have all stayed the same over the past few years. Okay. And then for important dates, I have May 18th on here. I forgot to correct it, but y'all's award applications and record books are due to the Lee County Extension Office on May 13th. And then y'all's county judging will be done sometime in May or June, and y'all's county extension agents are taking care of that. Your District 9 judging is scheduled for July 12th at the Montgomery County Extension Office. And then for those who place first at district judging in the senior age category, y'all will be submitted to the state judging, and that's usually done by a group of agents in the first week of August. I know Miss Jerry and Miss Tanya send y'all lots of reminders and information in the Lee County 4-H newsletter, so they'll be sure to send out reminders for the due dates and the applications and everything between now and then. But go ahead and mark your calendars for May 13th to turn in your awards applications and your record books. Okay. So whenever we're talking about record books, the main objectives are to allow 4-H members to see how they've grown in those project areas, what they've learned over the years, and kind of how to be creative in communicating that information. Okay. Some of it is to demonstrate the importance of keeping those written documentations of what you've been doing in those projects. It also allows for an opportunity for goal setting and documenting what actions you need to take in order to meet those goals. And then it's also an additional level of competition at the county, district, and state level for 4-H members to participate in. Okay. And whenever we get started with our record books, we have to talk about the record keeping process. So in theory, with all of your 4-H projects, every time we start a new 4-H year, we want y'all to set new project goals for what you're going to accomplish within the 4-H year, okay? So in theory, we would have goal setting, you would have journaling, keeping track of project receipts, what you've been doing in it, et cetera. And then the record book process is really reflecting on what's happened and whether or not you've achieved those goals and what you need to adjust for next year. Okay. With the documentation, there's a lot of different options for y'all to keep track of what you've been doing throughout the year to help you set yourselves up for success with putting your record books together. For some people, it is, keeping a spiral notebook and writing down what happened at their meetings. They take it with them to take notes at whatever learning opportunities that they went to, workshops, things like that. okay? For some people, it's keeping a big calendar where they're highlighting, what activities they did or writing in those learning activities as they go. For some people who have lots and lots of extra time on their hands and are super into, Pinterest organization and things looking really pretty, they might get one of those big folder sets and keep things organized by project, by, group that they've been working with, things like that. For some people, the shoebox method works. Okay, they might have a designated shoebox where, whatever meeting agenda or meeting notes or handouts they got at that learning experience go straight into the shoebox, and then they'll pull them out when they're ready to start their record books. Okay. It really depends on what is going to work best for you. Okay. So whenever you're choosing some kind of a documentation method, it has to be easy for you. It needs to be something that y'all can keep up with or be sustainable. And it needs to be done throughout the 4-H year, okay? I know we all have a really bad habit, particularly with record books. We will wait until, April or May to try and throw everything together at the last minute just because we're trying to balance, the end of the school year. We're wrapping up some of our 4-H projects. A lot of us just got done with major livestock shows, but we need to do our best to try and do it a little bit at a time throughout the year so that we're not scrambling at the last minute, okay? And again, whenever we are putting our record books together, the thing that we want y'all to ask yourselves is, did you meet your goals? And if not, what are you doing to adjust for the next year? Okay. One of the easiest ways to kind of think about what information you're looking for putting your record book together is thinking about the 4 different components of a 4-H project. Okay. So in theory, all of our 4-H projects are going to have at least 6 learning experiences, okay, and they need to be at least 30 minutes each. Those learning experiences are typically going to be what goes into your 4-H project section and a little bit in your 4-H story and photo portfolio, okay? You would have some kind of community service experience related to your project, some kind of leadership experience related to your project, and then some kind of exhibition experience related to your project, okay? So community service has its own section, leadership has its own section, and then exhibition would be any way that you kind of got to exhibit what you were doing or exhibit the final product of your 4-H project, okay? So that might be participating in a livestock show, it might be doing an educational presentation, it might be, presenting your project to your commissioner's court, what have you, okay? So once we've figured out kind of our documentation method for the year and we've kind of organized our 4-H project components, we need to look at our record book components, okay? So there's this handy dandy summary sheet that breaks down the different components of the record book by age group, okay? And all of these forms, the documents, guidebook, etc., are available on the Texas 4-H record book page. And let me show you what that looks like real quick. Okay. So whenever y'all go to the Texas 4-H record book page, you'll see this. You can scroll down here. You can download the family guide to record books that kind of has a written out version of what we're going over tonight. It has some helpful text in there for putting together the different sections. They do have a copy of the score sheet that y'all can look at. There's a state level PowerPoint that they've put together that's kind of generalized for it. They have the record book categories that have the specific detailed descriptions of what fits in each of those categories, the word forms for this year, and then there's some frequently asked questions and answers on there. There's also some access to some different video series that agents have put together. A couple of them go over the online Z Suites record book software. I'm not as experienced with the Z Suite, so I'm kind of focusing on the old school Word documents tonight, but I'd be happy to help y'all figure out any questions or things like that for the online system as y'all have them. There's also some story sample ideas with feedback on there. And then Michelle Mahalik from Montgomery County put together an online series last year and recorded and posted those videos on their YouTube channel. So she goes through a couple of the different sections and has some tips and tricks on that as well. Okay. Okay. So the good news is no matter what age category you're in, y'all all have the same set of Word forms and documents that you'll be using. The only thing that really changes based on your age category, so that would be your junior, intermediate, or senior age groups, be how many pages and how many years of your project that you're focusing on. So when we're putting our record books together, our 3rd through 5th graders or juniors are going to focus on this current year and the previous 2 years, so 3 years. Okay, intermediates are also going to have 3 years total. Okay, so they would focus on this year and then I think the last 2 to 3 years. Okay, and then senior, y'all are focused on up to 4 years total. Okay, so this year and the 3 previous years as y'all are going through your project areas. Okay, and the only change in those page allowances from last year is in the junior category. They've allowed y'all to move from 2 pages in the 4-H project experiences up to 3 pages now. Okay. All right, so starting with our covers on the record books, any type of cover or binder is accepted at your county, district, and state level of judging. Okay, it can be a 3-ring binder, it can be one of the paper folders with brads in it, it can be one of the official fancy green record book covers. They've also got these nice black and gold ones that you can get online. I think they're available on the 4-H mall for like $5 or $6 now. Okay. The official 4-H record book covers can be ordered from the National 4-H Supply or 4-H Mall if y'all want to. Y'all can go to Walmart, the Dollar General, whatever's closest to y'all to get something. Y'all can design a fun cover if you're using the 3-ring binders. I think most of our county extension offices typically have a small stash of the green covers. I know our office has them for about $3 each if y'all don't want to order them online and pay for shipping for them. Okay. So when we open our covers, the first thing that we're going to see, and it's going to be the first page on that Word document, is the check sheet. Okay. The only thing that y'all have to worry about filling out on this check sheet is just these top 2 lines up here where it says name, county, district, your age, division, and category. Okay. So name would be the 4-H member who's submitting the record book. Okay. Y'all are Lee County and y'all are District 9. Okay. Your age division is going to be based on your grade in school. So juniors are 3rd through 5th grade, intermediates are 6th through 8th graders, and seniors are 9th through 12th graders. Okay. And that grade level is going to be determined based on the grade that y'all just completed. Okay. So for your 2021-2022 school year, if you were a 5th grader, then you would submit it as a junior. Okay. At the judging levels, the first person who judges y'all's record books are going to be the person who completes this little check sheet down here and initials at the bottom. Okay. What I advise y'all to do is just, in light pencil on this item column, whenever y'all are putting your final record books together and right before you take them to the county extension office to turn them in, go through there and check off, yes, I've got my check sheet. The top 2 lines are filled in. Yes, I've got my personal information page, which will be the next page. I've inserted my 4-H story and portfolio, and then the rest of the report forms after it. Okay, kind of use it as a light checklist to make sure that y'all have all of the components there. Okay. The second page is going to be your personal info page. Okay. Again, name, county, district, age, division, category should all match the previous check sheet page. And before I forget, your category is going to be one of the 25 official categories that y'all can submit your record book in. Okay. And that'll be the main project that you're kind of focused on in your record book as you're talking. Okay. The number of years of 4-H. Okay, so that's the total number of years that you have been a 4-H member since the 3rd grade. Okay, I know most of us have been a member of 4-H since we were a Clover kid. Okay, but our kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade years don't count in the official 4-H enrollment. So they want y'all to start counting since 3rd grade how many years you've been a member of 4-H. And then they also want you to add the number of years that you've been focusing on that main 4-H project that you're submitting your record book into. Okay. And what that does is kind of gives the judges context for how in-depth you might be able to go with that project. So if this is your 1st year in that project or 2nd year in that project, typically you might not have as in-depth of an experience. You might not, you know, have found where you'd like to go with the project and things like that. Okay. Your address, personal information and everything, y'all are going to fill in here. Okay. And then make sure you'll grab your best email address for any communications, just in case there's any issues, your date of birth, your grade in school that you just completed. You'll fill out your demographic information, the name of your club or group. And then for the number of members in your 4-H club or group, make sure y'all call the county extension office and make sure that y'all are all using that same number. They've got an official number for enrollment that they'll usually have y'all put there. Okay. And then make sure that whenever y'all get ready to turn your record books in, you've got your 4-H member that signs, and then mom, dad, parent, guardian, okay, official person who's taking care of you will sign right below that. And then usually Tanya and Jerry, as they collect y'all's record books and start judging them at the county level, they'll go ahead and sign on that last line for y'all. Okay, so pretty straightforward on the first couple of pages. So this year, our state office has graciously added a space saver page for your 4-H story and photo portfolio. So this is the only portion of the record book that is not automatically included in the form that you download off that state website. Okay, your 4-H story and photo portfolio, you actually have to design in a different, you know, whatever word processing software that you choose. I usually use Microsoft Word, so that's what I default to. You can use Publisher. Some people design it in PowerPoint. Some people have designed it in Canva, whatever works for y'all. Okay. But basically, whenever y'all get ready to put your record book together, you would take this space saver page out, and then you would put the rest of your story and photo portfolio in there. Okay. So for formatting, okay, the juniors, y'all need to have at least 2 written pages. Intermediates would need to have at least 4 pages, and senior need a minimum of 6 pages. Okay. For juniors, y'all can basically go from 2 pages to a total of 8 pages, including your photos. Okay, so your photos and your story have to fit on a total of 8 pages. Intermediates, y'all would go from 4 pages to up to 10 pages, and then seniors, y'all would go from 6 pages to 10 pages. Okay, it needs to be double spaced in at least a 10-point font. We also accept handwritten record books, but make sure that if you handwrite your record book, it is legible. Typically, I would encourage y'all, before y'all sit down and handwrite everything, try and find somebody who can help you type. Try and find a way to get it typed and printed out, just to give yourself as much of an advantage as possible. Okay. You can decorate the story with backgrounds, word layouts, clip arts. You can do lots of fun images embedded into the background. Okay. This is your opportunity to get creative, to use color to show your personality and things like that. Okay. This is the only section of the record book that can actually have photos in it. Okay. And you have a couple of options for how you'd like to include those photos. They can either be grouped all together in kind of like a mini photo album. Usually people will place it towards the back of their story, or you can embed the photographs throughout. Okay. You have the choice of using captions on your photos. It kind of depends on what type of photo you're using. If you're talking about that photo as you're embedding it throughout your record book, things like that. Okay. If you're embedding your photos throughout the story, and it's kind of obvious what you're doing in that photo. Like if I can see you're talking about your dog care and training project, and I clearly see a picture of you working with your dog or walking your dog, you wouldn't necessarily need a caption for that photo, okay? If you are choosing to group all of your photos together in kind of a mini photo album towards the back of your story, then I would suggest that you use captions just to let us know what's going on, maybe which part of your 4-H projects that you're working on, things like that, okay? Usually I feel like it's a little bit easier for y'all to embed them throughout the story and kind of talk about it, and then you don't have to worry about captions, so you have a little bit more working space for additional text and things like that, okay? The big thing with your photographs, they need to be a high quality image, so make sure that you're taking a good quality image, it's not blurry, the size makes it obvious to see what's going on, okay? We want you to be demonstrating your project work, so what you're doing, learning, teaching, participating in, things like that. We do want to see you in action, so not just your posed photos or group photos, but where you're actually doing something and we can see what it is, okay? And then one of the biggest things is they don't want you to include non-4-H activities in it, okay? Typically, I think in the actual guidebook, it specifically says, you know, photos depicting family activities, livestock auctions, UIL activities, sporting events, other school events that are not related to 4-H, et cetera, okay? My caveat here is if your family is together at a 4-H activity, include a picture of your family, okay? Y'all are expected to talk about your family a little bit in your 4-H story. It kind of seems silly to me to not have one photo in there. Just make sure as you're including photos in other areas of your story, just make sure that they're 4-H focused, okay? And then just a reminder that if you're entering into the photography category, it used to allow you to include a few extra photos so you could show some of the cool photos that you submitted to contests and things. They no longer allow that for the photography category, okay? So part of why we have y'all focus a little bit more on using that minimum of 10-point font and double spacing is just so it is easier to read what you have, okay? So in example 1, and I've actually had to judge a record book that was written like this in really, really tiny font. It's just really hard for us to see. It's really easy for us to get lost in your story. If it becomes challenging to read your story, most judges are going to kind of skim over it and not pay as much attention, unfortunately, just because it's super hard on their eyes, okay? The other thing is when you're using that kind of small font and it's all squished together, if you use some attention-getting things like bolding words, underlining things, or italicizing things to emphasize them and draw the judge's attention, they can sometimes get lost in that tiny text, okay? So in example 2, it's a little bit easier. You can see I've bolded a couple of things that I would want the judges to pay attention to. It would be a lot easier on my eyes, and I can incorporate some design elements or colored text in there without it becoming too distracting, okay? So your 4-H story, whenever you're formatting it, you're going to give it some kind of a header or title, okay? Most typically what we'll see is my 4-H story and photo portfolio, or my, whatever your record book category is, so my 4-H livestock judging story and photo portfolio. You're going to start out with information about yourself, your family, and where you're from. Okay, so your 4-H community, when and why you joined 4-H. You are going to discuss your projects that you are working on, starting with your main 4-H project that you're entering your record book into first. Okay, and then kind of working down from biggest focus to least focus with your 4-H projects. Okay. Most of y'all are typically going to have somewhere between 2 and 5 projects that you're working on. So again, you want to focus on your record book category first, and then from biggest focus to smallest focus in those project areas, okay? You need to make sure that you are listing out your project goals, what you've been up to in that project. You might include why you chose to get involved in that project. If you just started on that project or switched projects, you need to include information on why you did that, okay? You're also going to talk about, how you've grown in there. You're going to evaluate whether or not you achieved your project goals and what your goals are for next year, okay? The other thing is they want to know how 4-H has impacted your life or helped you grow. So some of those are, what were some of your leadership and citizenship experiences? What have you been doing in community service and leadership activities? Okay. How being a 4-H member has helped you set goals, develop new interests. If you, kind of have been exploring future plans or career goals that have been influenced by your experiences. If there's some cool information that doesn't fit anywhere else in the project report forms as you're going through, you can add that information here. Okay, so if you've done something super cool, but it doesn't fit in either the project experience, leadership, or whatever, then you can also include that information. Okay, and again, this is your section where you're able to add colored fonts. You can add lots of embellishments. You get to show off your personality, your sense of humor, and things like that. Okay. So some different ways to show your personality. I think this individual, they designed theirs in PowerPoint kind of as like a newspaper article type of thing, just as a creative way to distinguish them from some of the other record books. So they got to incorporate some different colors, some different information. His project goals are a lot easier to see because he's got them listed out over here. He's got some cool pictures. So we have a picture of him. We've got a picture of his family. And you can kind of see how he got started, where he lives. He's included some other information. He personally uses captions since he hasn't been able to get too in-depth into his project area so far. Okay. Another version that he did was kind of a blog style. And again, I think this one was also in PowerPoint, either PowerPoint or Publisher. Okay. But you can also do a narrative style. Okay. And then let me stop sharing. Miss Jerry was kind enough to start a kind of version of a story so we could show you how to get started with it. So hers, since she's a county extension agent, we kind of started a county extension agent story. Okay, so she started just in a Word document. Okay, chose a Times New Roman 12-point font, so it was large enough, made sure we double spaced it. We like the little clover border since we're agents, so we chose to add that. Okay, so she introduces herself, kind of talks about her 4-H experience, some of her education, okay, what some of her starting out projects were, and then what we mean by using attention getters. Okay, so you can use colored, bolded, underlined fonts in this area. You can add pictures, you can get fancy with the little borders and how they're presented. You can add these little elements, okay, to highlight some of them or add fun. Okay. And then usually what I'll recommend if you're using colored fonts, one, make sure they're super easy to read. Okay. So I tend to gravitate towards like the primary colors other than yellow. Okay. So that blues and reds, specifically darker colored reds, some of the greens. Okay. I think usually some of the darker purples. If you like pink, make sure it's a dark enough pink that it's easy to read. Whenever y'all are highlighting certain bits of information, make sure that it's not large paragraphs that you're bolding, highlighting, underlining, whatever. Okay, we're kind of just drawing our attention to certain areas and certain things that we want the judges to note. Okay, so for instance, if I take this and I bold it, and I make it that same color, it kind of loses the effect and the attention getting factor there. Okay. So we want to kind of be choosy about that. A good way to start kind of integrating that or letting the judges know where your project information starts. Okay. You can basically start by bolding, underlining, and highlighting your project areas as you talk about them. So in this one, we chose a different color for each project area. just so we can see, okay, we switched over from shooting sports to livestock projects over here. Usually we'll kind of, if there's a cool piece of information or if there's a project goal that we want highlighted, because we have to specifically include those, we might highlight that sentence where we start talking about them and information like that. Okay. Switch back over. Okay, do y'all have any questions or comments about the story section so far? All right, we'll go ahead and move on. Okay, so the next section is automatically included in that Word document that you downloaded, okay? So the next section is going to be your 4-H project experiences. And this is where you kind of get into the meat of what you actually did in your 4-H projects, okay? As we go through the different sections, there are some helpful text instructions at the top, okay, of each of those sections. It gives you the page limits, the number limits, and things like that. It also has kind of some ideas of what information to include. If y'all are stuck, look at those instructions and kind of figure out how you want to format that information in there, okay? And this section, you basically get this header and then it's blank pages for you to add information as you would like to format it, okay? So for juniors, y'all have a maximum of 3 pages. Intermediates have a maximum of 3 pages, and then seniors have a maximum of 4 pages, okay? This section, you are allowed to include up to 4 of your main 4-H projects, okay? If you only have 2 or 3 projects, that's okay. Use that space to include as much information as you possibly can, okay, to highlight those projects. If you have more than 4 projects, there's an additional section called Other 4-H projects that you can add information to later on in the record book, okay? Again, since we're starting out with our 4-H project experiences and you have submitted your record book into a specific category, you want to make sure that that main record book category is the area that you have highlighted the very first in that section, okay? And you want to include as much information as possible. Okay. Now, we do have some situations where people are doing individually directed projects. Please include those in there, okay? If you're doing a specific 4-H project that doesn't fit a record book category or anything like that, and you still have those 4 main components to that project, go ahead and include it, okay? And remember that we are focused on this year and then up to 2 to 3 of the previous years, okay? And we want you to demonstrate, how you've grown from year to year in that project. There are a few different ways that you can do this, okay? And I've got some formatting examples that we'll talk about in just a second, okay? But the main thing that you want to include, you want to make sure that somewhere on there, as you are going to be switching between projects, you include a very obvious project name. This area, you're going to be talking about what you learned or did in your project area, okay? So if you did anything with, showing or exhibiting your projects, if you participated in contests, if you did anything to learn, plan, etc. with your project, you can include some of your project goals and how you're changing your project for next year, okay? But all the workshops, contests, tours, if you've done individual research, computer learning modules, okay? If you had to retake the quality counts test or anything like that, or did online courses, which I know most of us have done the past couple of years with COVID, y'all can include all of those things in this section. If you have interviewed anyone in the industry that you're focusing on with this 4-H project, okay? All of those count, okay? Some information that would be good to include would be like number of years in the project, if you had to purchase materials or items, if you made items or raised animals, If you specifically visited places, if you've kept track of the cost of those items, profits and losses, the number of hours you spent on the project, or individual research or learning are all good things to include in there, okay? The only thing that's really not included in this project experience is your leadership experience and your community service experience related to your project area are going to be listed in those separate sections in later on in the project forms, okay, or in the record book forms, okay. Anything that you helped lead, plan, or teach within your project area, you're going to report as volunteer leadership in the next section, okay? If you are entered into one of those leadership or citizenship or community service record books, your learning experiences are going to look a little bit more like learning about those different components of what goes into those projects, okay? So if you're focused on leadership, you might be learning different leadership styles, how to work with different types of people, the different types of communication, how to effectively communicate with different groups of people. You might be researching how to motivate others. It might be researching different learning methods for your presentations and things like that, okay? So for formatting, y'all have a blank space. Y'all can use narratives, bullet points, tables, etc. Okay. Again, you're going to kind of follow those same factors for our 4-H story and our project experiences. You want to make sure you're using at least a 10-point font. It does not have to be double spaced here. The biggest thing is you want to make sure that your information that you're presenting is easy to read and understand. And it's easy to compare this year's project experience with your previous 2 to 3 years of project experience, okay? I know my preference is to include small bits of narrative with some easily presentable tables and bullet points, just so I can easily see that information laid out, okay? And you still get to include the narrative to discuss some of the cool things that you've done in that project or other information that you want highlighted or how you're changing or adapting that project over time, okay? So some examples of tables, these are some more of the kind of old school examples, but they're a good place to start. So this person did sports fishing. So up on the top, it kind of discussed just some of the general record keeping things that they did. So they kept track of, the number of hours that they spent fishing, number of fishing trips they took, the number of fish caught, etc. Okay, so that's kind of cool information. They've only included 1 year here, so I would kind of look back at that information sheet towards the beginning of the record book and see, is this their first year? Did they switch gears? What kind of experience should I be looking for here? And what have you done and what have you learned? So again, we've got the year, they included the level. So usually we've got county would be C, state would be S, N would be national, I would be international, okay? So they attended and assisted with an angler workshop. They did that one time. Looks like they did a couple of research experiences with Texas fishing regulations. I would have some questions about, how many hours or articles that they read, things like that, okay? But they've included like some of the things that they did individually. They promoted the sport fishing project. So that would be more of a promotional leadership experience. So that would need to move towards the leadership experience section. Okay. Some other examples. This one is for a beef cattle project. I like that this one includes some of the monetary value of their animals. The only thing I don't like, so I like how they included the different years so I can kind of see how it's either expanded, grown, or, how they focused in their production over time, okay? I would like, since they have some extra space in this top row where they talk about the number of cattle owned, if you didn't think about it or you weren't experienced with cattle and you were judging this category, you might have questions about the B35, C17. After talking to this person, it's 35 bulls and 17 cows, okay? I would want them to use that little bit of extra space to kind of specify that. They showed 2 heifers, they showed 2 steers, they kind of had an estimated year-end value of cattle, kind of their income, purchase price. They gave a general estimate on their feed, vet fees, etc. If they had a profit or loss, the number of hours that they spent over the year in the project. And then they had kind of a brief summary statement, okay? I like that they included that they expanded their beef project this year, and they specified how many. They raised 13 replacement heifers. They talk about their calf scramble certificates. So that's a really good piece of information that might not fit somewhere else in the record book to highlight, okay? They did some cool learning skills and things like that. So on this one, I would want them to expand on, you know, where did they learn those skills? What workshops did they attend? Was it, you know, a local workshop, county, district, whatever, okay? What shows did they attend? Did they do any other contests? Maybe did they participate in livestock judging that would also fit in with this project category? Did they participate in like the beef skillathons and things like that? Okay. The other thing is, I know for some parents, they're not necessarily comfortable with sharing some of their financial information for the 4-H projects. That is okay. Okay. You can kind of pick and choose how you're including that. If you choose to, you know, keep track of, you know, maybe you don't want to mention specifically how much you paid for that animal project or whatever, you might include things, you know, like we spent X amount of dollars on feed for this project this year, or, you know, we purchased, I don't know, 24 bags of feed this year, you know, just something so you can show that yes, y'all have been keeping track of numbers of things that y'all have purchased for this project and things like that. You could, instead of including the cost of the vet visit, just say, you know, we had 3 trips to the vet, things like that, okay? I do like for exhibitors, especially with their livestock projects, to kind of estimate the number of hours that they spent with that project versus like the number of hours that they did with their learning experiences or participating at the shows, like the number of shows they participated in, if they participated at the county or state level typically, okay? And then same kind of thing for clothing and textiles and food nutrition projects, okay? In these projects, it might be a little bit different, some of the items that you're able to provide numbers for. For example, if you're doing clothing and textiles specifically, which is now the fashion and interior design project, if you're working with clothing items, you might specify, you know, the number of items purchased, the number of items made, how many hours you spent making those items, if you purchase accessories for them, if you participated in the county, district, or state contest, things like that. Okay, other things, specifically if you are sewing your own projects, if you know the yardages of fabric that you've purchased for these different projects, that might be a cool thing to include. You can include cost information on these a little bit easier and things like that. Okay, and again, we've got a quick summary statement down here. I would want that to be expanded. Okay. The same thing with food nutrition. Food nutrition is a little bit more difficult, I feel like, than the other projects on some of the items that you're able to present in a table. This one, you know, if you're doing meal and snack preparation, if you've kept track of some of the cost of the food items, if you have like the number of food challenge or food show practices that you attended, if you have like a weekly recipe challenge or something like that, you want to make sure that you're including some information and things like that that are kind of highlighting the different things that you've kept track of and cool things that you're doing to separate yourself out in that project area. Okay. I kind of liked this table just for demonstrating some of the different levels of learning experiences that this individual did. You can adapt it to include, you know, if you go to some similar conferences or learning experiences from year to year. You can kind of demonstrate that over in the year area. So maybe you went from 2018 to 2022, you always go to your district mega meeting or leadership lab or something like that, where you're actively learning stuff for your project area. And then you would list that out as, local, club, county, district, state, etc., kind of what you participated in and what you learned there. You can also include how long or how many hours that experience was. I know previously some individuals choose to include kind of their learning objective or project objectives and kind of how those apply to each learning experience. Okay. So this is kind of an example of some really, really, really good information. This is specifically a beef cattle project, but the way it is formatted makes it really hard to pay attention to all of the cool things that they've done, okay? So they do a really good job of, kind of compiling the information so I can see they did this for, a total of 4 or 5 years. They did it at the national, state, district, county level. Okay. They also include a number that delineates or denotes how many times they did those opportunities. So N1 would be like 1 national time, okay, or 1 national participation. They also include the number of hours that they dedicated to that experience, okay. And then down here is an example of some of the learning objectives that they achieved throughout this year, okay. What I have suggested, so the next couple of examples are some tables that I have put together just based on some formatting that made it easier for me to see as a judge and kind of look over the information. I've got these on an Excel spreadsheet and I'll send them to Miss Jerry so she can share them with y'all as well. Okay, but for animal projects, we've kind of got some generic information up at the top that kind of shows our record keeping skills up here. It compares it from year to year. Okay. And these are just some easier information to keep track of. So the number of animals you owned, if you bred any, number of animals you actually showed, the number of major shows you attended, jackpot shows and local shows attended, if you kept track of the cost of your show entries, vet costs, feed costs, if you won any, okay, and then kind of calculates out the profit or loss based on that, okay. In the next section, you can kind of outline your learning experiences. The only thing that I didn't do here was include like the number of hours that those experiences would be. So you might add that detail. You can add the number of years you did it, the level that you did it at. If you wanted to add like the number of times you did that level next to it, you could insert that information as well, okay? And then the next section would be like project exhibition. So that would be, if you did any educational presentations, if you did a skill-a-thon, all of your contest and actual showing and participation, you could list out the specific things that you did, the number of years that you've been doing them, okay? All of the major livestock shows are all considered to be state experiences or state level experiences, okay? So you can include that. And then down at the bottom, you've got kind of a summary thing that you could include, some other information or kind of that narrative if you wanted to insert a few sentences about, what you're doing in the project, what was the best experience this year, how you're adjusting it, et cetera, okay? If you are color coding your projects as you're talking about them in your story, you can color code them to match kind of this color on the table here. So if I was talking about my goat project in my story, I would make sure it's the same blue where I highlight that project experience. And then I can also use that same color in the leadership and community service experience to color code my specific project related leadership and community service experience, okay? So another example would be for like a dog project. You can also insert some of the names of the animals if you have some really cool ones. We have some goofy ones, so I usually think that's kind of funny to include, okay? So a dog project would be a little bit different. You would adapt it, again, number of dogs owned, number trained, number of hours you spent doing that, number of agility competitions, number of shows, Again, cost of show entries, veterinary costs, feed costs, amount of money, won or made at auction, whatever, and then your profit or loss. Your activity and experience might be a little bit different. So if you were in a project-based club, you could include, we attended 12 dog project meetings, favorite topics or whatever. We did this, this number of years at the county level. Okay. Again, project exhibition might be a little bit different. They could have done an educational presentation. It could be a club experience. It could be participation in the Skill-a-thon contest or the Texas 4-H dog show. Okay. And then in my little narrative or summary down here, I would talk about my goals, progress, or changes in the project. So again, I can highlight or bold a couple of the different things that I want judges to really pay attention to. I can talk about, how long I've specifically worked with specific animals, when I actually got started with them. So in this instance, I was working with dogs. I started with them 2 years ago. We adopted another one this year. We weren't really looking for one, but he turned out to be a good fit for the family. We decided we wanted to learn more about therapy dogs and learn into different training methods for them. And then talk about how I'm going to adjust my project later on. Okay. So for a leadership style project, again, your record keeping might look a little bit different. You might be looking into the number of leadership roles that you had, number of hours learning about different styles of leadership or leadership related topics, workshops attended, hours spent in those leadership roles in your club, county, whatever. Things like that. Your learning experiences are probably going to be a little bit more individual research based. So if you're research communication styles, you might do internet searches, you might include details on, articles read, things like that. Okay. How long those experiences were or how long you spent on those individual items. Okay. If you attended a leadership lab and learned those leadership activities, participated in like some of the larger statewide workshops. So like the Texas 4-H Lead Academy might be a good opportunity there. Your project exhibition might look a little bit different. You might participate in things like the Texas 4-H Congress, the 4-H Day at the Capitol experience. You might be participating in like the Leaders for Life contest or like hosting a project booth, something like that. Your educational presentations are typically going to be focused a little bit more on like leadership, community service, things like that. Okay. Some other ways that people have listed out some of the cool experiences they did. This individual kind of gave like bullet point summaries of some of the cool experiences or like a table on specific numbers applying to their different projects. So for instance, they have a horse project, they have a beef project is the one in the yellow. And you kind of see it's really hard the way that's labeled. Okay. And then they had a vet science, and then they listed separately just the way everything kind of spaced out in their record book form, this on a separate page so that they could squeeze the maximum space and add as much text as possible while still keeping it neat and readable in the form. Okay. So they listed all of their exhibition and contest participation separately on one page. It was color coded the same way they talked about their project experience. So for instance, their horse project is green. So everywhere else they talk about their horse project or highlight, where their horse project information begins, they would start with like a green header. Okay. Okay. Y'all have questions about the 4-H project section? Okay, we'll move on. So the next section is our 4-H leadership experience section. And again, we've got that help text up at the top that tells you, what the different roles are. It explains the different levels that y'all can kind of delineate. This is a prepared table form, okay? And again, it's pretty easy. You're going to include the year, just a general name for the leadership activity you participated in, the role. So if you're elected, appointed, volunteer, promotional, if it was a club, county, district, state, national, international level experience, and then a good description of your responsibilities, duties, and accomplishments, okay? So for this section, juniors, y'all are limited to 1 page and 10 high quality descriptions of activities that you did. Intermediates would be 2 pages and 15 high quality descriptions of what you did. Seniors are going to be 25 entries and 3 pages, okay? And when we're talking about it, we want to make sure that if you have met that page limit, or you don't have that many experiences and you've got a large number of unused boxes, you want to make sure, just for neatness and to conserve as much space as possible, you're deleting the unused boxes on those tables, okay? We do want to see a combination of a couple of project-related leadership experiences and general leadership experiences that you might be participating in your club or county, okay, or district, state, etc. Okay. There are going to be a couple of instances where if you are specifically providing leadership to a community service project, you are actually going to talk about that in the community service section, okay? And then all of your fundraising activities need to be listed under leadership. These are typically going to be promotional leadership activities, where if you are specifically fundraising activity or fundraising things for your club or your county, y'all are going to directly benefit from those, okay? So like, for instance, if the Lee County Shooting Sports Club decided to, raise funds to purchase some additional ammunition for participants this year, those participants would be directly benefiting from raising those funds, okay? And in theory, those kids would be involved in planning that fundraiser activity and executing it, okay? So that would be a leadership thing. And then Ms. Shanna asked, so this can include an organization like the Cattle Breeder Association. Not quite. So the cattle breeder associations and some of those external associations are a little bit complicated in the record book. So any of like the educational workshops and seminars that the kids go to in those outside associations, they can report on in the project, 4-H project section, because that does apply as a learning experience that contributes to their overall 4-H project. But they're specific, like if they are doing specific ambassador things for that association, so leadership, community service, whatever, then that would go in the non-4-H section. It's still a very good thing to have, and we want those kids to be doing it, but those activities where they're representing that external association would go in that non-4-H section, if that makes sense. Okay, that's a very good question though. I'm glad you asked that. Okay, so for 4-H leadership experiences, there's, whenever we're talking about the types, okay, so promotional would basically be, have you told someone about 4-H? Did you wear your 4-H t-shirt? Did you answer 4-H related questions? Basically help someone learn about the 4-H program and what it has to offer. You might have answered specific project related questions, things like that, okay? Volunteer leadership is basically if you led or taught anything about your 4-H projects, either for 4-H members or non-4-H members, okay? So if you led some kind of a program where you taught some kids about, I don't know, we just did hatching in the classroom here this past week. So, your poultry project, if you went and helped set eggs in an incubator for like a 2nd grade class, then you would specifically be leading or teaching others about that poultry project. So that would be a volunteer leadership, okay? Elected and appointed positions are going to be those positions like your club officers, county council positions, ambassadors, either at the county or state level, and things like that. So those are going to be the positions where you are specifically doing things to guide or lead or improve the 4-H program, okay? So if you are an officer position in a club or county council situation, you're typically going to have been voted into your position. That will be an elected position. if you were, voluntold by your county agent, voluntold by a project leader, or selected as an ambassador for something, then you're typically going to have been appointed to that position, okay? And then the levels, so CL is usually going to denote the club experience, CO is county, D for district, S for state, and N for national, okay? Whenever you are providing a description for your leadership experiences, I cannot stress this enough. We don't just want a general description of what that activity was. We want y'all to include verbs that shows us how you actually exhibited leadership, what you actually did that made a difference in that situation. Okay, so things like I coordinated, planned, led, organized, created, assisted, presented, arranged, I helped with, whatever, but it's going to be something that you actively did that contributed to that activity and showed that you stepped up and did something. Okay. The other thing would be to include details like numbers. Okay, so how many people attended? How long was the event? How many meetings did you go to, etc. Okay, and again, on that form, okay, if you did some similar activities from year to year, so like if you have been your club president for the past 3 years, then you can kind of summarize, from 2018 to 2021, I was the club president, trying to think, one of our clubs is the Rockney 4-H Club, so I would have listed it as the Rockney 4-H Club president. I was elected into that position. It was the club level. I actively prepared the agenda for meetings, and provided overall leadership to the club by sending reminders for meetings, making sure that other officers were prepared and knew what to expect. We hosted 12 meetings this past year, and each meeting was approximately 2 hours long and had 35 attendees. Okay, we want y'all to show, be able to use those numbers and descriptions to show how in-depth you got with those positions and those leadership and community service experiences later on. Okay, so some specific project-related leadership examples might be serving as a junior or team leader for a project. You help to plan and execute workshops, field trips, any learning experiences where you assisted with coordinating that for your project area. Maybe you created some kind of an activity or game or informational resource that is now being distributed either by your club or your county extension agent. Maybe you served as a judge in that specific project area or helped coach kids, okay? Any way that you're leading activities that are specifically related to your project, okay? We want to see some club level leadership examples. So those might be serving as a club officer, serving as a committee chairman for something in your club. Again, leading a educational activity or recreation or something in your club. Okay, if you led some kind of a booth, a family activity or fun activity, if you helped to schedule workers for club-related responsibilities, represented your club as something, as a delegate, anything like that would also count, okay? County level leadership examples. So again, those are your county council officers. If you're a county ambassador, you led something at a county event, could be recreation, could be a county workshop if you led or assisted with planning for those county level events. It could be, providing feedback for a countywide holiday party. We're planning a county dance, record keeping workshop, what have you, but something at that county level. Okay, district and state leadership examples. Again, district state council officers, you led recreation at the district or state level, led or assisted with district, state level workshops, events, things like that. You attended and participated in District 10 Leadership Lab. It could be, again, those ambassador positions that are available, things like that. Okay. And I think we're running short on time tonight, so I'm not going to specifically make y'all test yourselves tonight, but kind of think about these different experiences, okay? If I wore a 4-H t-shirt to a school and visited with 10 students, that's going to be typically a promotional leadership opportunity. We had a 4-H open house. We advertised, planned, promoted our 4-H open house. We made plant pals, free carnival games, popcorn. We reached 500 people. Again, it's an open house. It was probably a county level experience, one, because it was a giant open house. We're talking about 4-H experiences, so it's going to be a promotional leadership area. Okay. I volunteered to set up chairs and tables at 2 club meetings. So that would be, a volunteer leadership role at the club level. Okay. We did a county 4-H council barbecue fundraiser. We sold 40 barbecue tickets. So that's going to be another county level experience. It's probably a volunteer leadership. Could potentially be a promotional and volunteer leadership if we had some external people come in and we also answered questions related to 4-H at that opportunity. Okay, again, led pledges at the club meeting. You might have been appointed to lead the pledges at that club meeting. Okay, if you were appointed, you can do that. It could also be a volunteer leadership example. Okay. Some other descriptions that you can use. So again, you can kind of summarize, if you did them for multiple years, you can summarize that in the year area. If you are a council secretary or something like that, or officer position, again, you're elected, appointed, it's at whatever level. You want to make sure you've got that quality experience and description. You're going to specifically, highlight the number of meetings you went to, include a good description of your duty. If you are serving as like a committee member or an ambassador or part of a planning group, you can specifically mention that you served in that capacity for however long, if it was months, weeks, years, number of meetings, whatever. And then, they designed and facilitated activities for whatever y'all were facilitating it for. If you had multiple different things that y'all were planning in that same group, you can also include that by using bullet points and things like that. Okay. If you helped with planning like a project area, then you would include, you served specifically as a team leader for that project. And then again, those verbs, I led and presented the introductory session for 14 people. If it was a multi-county program, how many counties participated? Do you know how many districts? And then what specifically did you do? Okay, even if you monitored the chat box and some of the Zoom meetings or whatever that you attended, those still count as leadership activities. Okay, you can mention if you were volunteered by your county extension agent or you did it as a favor for your county agent. I joke with our kids that we volunteer y'all to do quite a few things. Anything that we volunteer y'all to do usually counts as some kind of a volunteer leadership experience. So if it's setting up for something, if it's reaching out to someone to schedule a activity or workshop, contacting people helps. Okay, if you're asked to double check if a space is available, things like that also count towards those activities as well. Okay. In most cases, particularly for our seniors and some of our intermediates, y'all have been doing so many activities that when y'all actually sit down and create these kind of high quality descriptions, y'all may run out of page space before you meet all 25 of those potential activities. Okay, that is okay. We want y'all to focus on the quality of those experiences and make sure that you've got a good description there, not just the number of experiences. And you might have to get kind of selective on which experiences you are choosing and figure out how to kind of summarize a couple of those. So like if you were a club officer and you've been a club officer since the dawn of time, you might include those as, club officer and then specifically, 2019 president or something like that in this leadership activity area, and then kind of give a general summary of how many meetings you've attended, any cool things that you did, whatever. Okay. All right. Do y'all have any questions about the leadership section? All right. So for the community service section, again, we've got another kind of preformed table. We've got some good help text that tells us, the entry limitations and everything. So juniors have 1 page again with 10 entries. Intermediates have 2 pages and up to 15. Seniors again have 3 pages and up to 25. Okay. Again, we've got a space for our year, the role, which is also described up here. Okay. We're going to have a general area for the name of our service activity, and then an area for us to be able to describe the importance and impact of that activity. Okay. Again, we want to focus on very high quality descriptions here. We want to make sure that we delete unused boxes just so that we can take advantage of as much space as possible, and it makes it look nice and neat. Okay. This is going to focus on basically all of the experiences where you helped other people through 4-H. Okay. We want to see a balance of the 3 different types of roles. Okay. And it doesn't have to be equally distributed between all 3 of these roles, but typically we want to see at least a couple of each one. Specifically, seniors need to aim for at least 1 to 3 of the primary leadership roles. Okay. So the Y is for yourself. So that is for any community service activity that you led on your own, all by yourself, nobody helped you, you were the Lone Ranger. Okay. M is for a member of a group. So you helped another group when another 4-H person asked you to. Okay. And then P is going to be for primary leadership. So you were the primary person who organized, arranged, led, contacted, recruited, whatever other 4-H members. Okay. So you would be the person reaching out to your other 4-H members and making sure that project happened. Okay. So the service activity or activity name is pretty straightforward. So it's going to be the name of whatever it was. The importance and impact is really where you're going to be able to include a really good description on why that was helpful or important to community. Okay. And specifically focus on what difference that made in your community. Okay. Not just what impact it had on you yourself. Okay. This isn't about you. It's about your community, who you were helping. Okay. It needs to be some kind of a service that does not benefit you or your club directly. Okay. If it benefits you or your club directly, that's more of a leadership experience where y'all are providing leadership and guiding. Okay. Some good numbers to include might be the number of people that were served or impacted. Okay. The number of people that were collected together to actually perform the community service activity. So how many 4-H'ers were involved? How many adults? Did y'all have any public members who came to contribute? You can include the number of hours served, but make sure those descriptions count and you're showing, you know, how big of a change you made through that community service activity. Okay. So again, we want at least a couple of those to be project related. And then most of them are going to be things that you've been doing through your club or county or even district activities. Okay. Some of your citizenship experiences are going to go under project experiences in section 1. And those are going to be, you know, trying to think of how to describe the citizenship ones. They're not true community service activities. Again, some of those are going to be, you know, how you're adjusting those project areas and things like that. Okay. Again, we don't want fundraising experience in this section. That's going to go under your leadership. The only exception to that fundraising rule would be if y'all are specifically fundraising for an external group and the 4-H groups are not going to benefit from it directly. So for instance, when Hurricane Harvey hit, there's a group of 4-H members out of Travis County who specifically raised funds and collected items to help a family be able to purchase a new home, you know, be able to make their lives a little bit more comfortable, things like that. Okay. So they are donating to you to go to a different person or group. You're not directly fundraising to benefit the 4-H program. Okay. So some examples of a community service experience that you're doing by yourself. So you specifically donated your clothes to Goodwill. Also, if your parents donated things on your behalf, you get to count that. Okay. Donated animal supplies to the shelter, things that you're specifically doing on your own. If you're a member of a group, it could be you participated in the club or council service activities. Maybe you gathered and donated supplies to hurricane victims. If you're doing your specific primary leadership experiences, again, you're going to need to use those leader verbs that show what you did to lead those experiences. So you arranged, coordinated, planned, and executed a countywide Brown Santa community service project. You led a Blankets of Love project and coordinated with the club manager on how to get that project going. Okay, so in those descriptions, you're going to need to show, why that was considered a leadership experience for you. Okay, so we're looking at our name of our activity would be a pet toy drive. I coordinated and led an event to create and donate dog enrichment toys for the Austin Humane Society. 75 toys were made and donated. Okay, so that would probably be a primary leadership. So it actively shows that they did something to lead or coordinate that event, shows what it was, gives us a number of toys that were made and donated. Okay. So for the school supply drive, I donated 5 large boxes of school supplies to the Boys and Girls Club of Austin. That one would probably be a why or yourself experience. You did that on your own, but you also, specifically named the group that you were donating to. You included some numbers of supplies that you did. For the pet supply drive, the club collected 400 pounds of food and 300 supply items to benefit 120 animals. I collected 50 pounds to contribute. So we know it's a club activity. We kept track of the total number of items that were donated, where it was going. And then I can also specifically include information on what I contributed to highlight some of my cool things, especially if you contributed a large amount to that community service activity. Excuse me. That one would also be a member of a group since we did that as part of a club. Okay. So some other examples. I know for some of us, we have recurring or annual community service projects, so that you can kind of summarize, if you did it for multiple years, what that looks like. If we did it from 2020 to 2023, we named it, specifically included our description and efforts there. Again, we can use text helpers like bold, highlighting, underlining, italicizing, whatever, to kind of highlight some key information there or show some of the impact. That's usually a good thing to do if you have numbers, or like you contributed a specific large amount to something, or if you're doing those primary leadership experiences, kind of highlighting some of those leadership verbs and things like that. So those kind of stand out. Again, if we are color coding, we can also color code and then denote below that this one is project related. Okay. Do y'all have any questions about the community service experience section? All righty. Okay. So section 4 is our space for other projects. It's kind of a tiny space, okay? And so juniors are limited to 1 page, so it's as much information as you can reasonably fit on that page. Intermediates and seniors, y'all have 2 pages to talk about any of your remaining projects that either did not fit in section 1 or even spilled over from section 1, depending as the case may be, okay? All of the same formatting suggestions from that 4-H project section 1 are going to apply here, because again, you've got basically this header and then it's a blank space below. Okay. Section 5 is going to be for 4-H recognition and awards. Again, it's a pre-formatted table. Okay. It's got our help text at the top, so we can see, what level we earned those recognitions for, what years we earned them in, what the name of the recognition was, and then the big thing here is the importance to the 4-H member. Okay. So whenever we are talking about importance, we're specifically talking about why did this matter to you when you think about your 4-H recognition and awards. Why does this one stand out? What makes it so special? Okay. And again, because it's a pre-formatted table, if we spill over past that page limitation, we want to make sure that we're deleting any unused boxes, okay? And basically what we mean by the importance, we want to make sure that it's not just like, well, I got a ribbon for this. Okay, that's cool. We're excited that you got a ribbon. We're excited that you got the belt buckle, but what was exciting about that? What we typically don't want to see is 25 different descriptions that say it showed how hard I worked. We want to know why they care about that. It doesn't necessarily have to be something like a belt buckle or ribbon. It can be any of your county awards. It can be a statewide recognition. It could be a specific call out at a club or council meeting, okay? It could be, you know, maybe their name got recognized because of all their hard work that they were putting into something, okay? But basically we want to know, you know, why that specific recognition of whatever it might have been made a difference to that 4-H member, okay? Some of the better descriptions that I've seen are, you know, this really did mean so much to me because it was my first year to do this project. They won showmanship at the show. You know, they had worked really hard and that had been one of their main goals that year. So they really wanted to focus on that to help them exhibit their animals better over time in all of their projects, okay? It could be recognizing that they made specific improvements in a skill area. You know, my goal was to achieve this. I had focused on, you know, their record keeping, their cooking, their presentation skills, their showing skills, whatever the case may be, okay? Some of it might be they had switched project gears and that was the first time they had participated in that project, and for them to be recognized was really cool. It could be that was the highest placing that they had at a specific experience. You know, if you're working on like a breeding or selection project, if you're working on a specific teamwork project or whatever, that award might have helped them to stay motivated and let them know that they were headed in the right direction to achieve other goals in that project area. Probably the one that brought tears to my eyes, there was a kid in Travis County when I was the agent there that, so his family had been breeding goats, I think for maybe like the past 15-ish years, but they had been working together as a family team to breed a goat that would win their county show for about 10 years. And they managed to get grand champion with one of their homebred goats. So they were super excited. It was a multi-generational effort. It meant that their family was on the right track and they were finally reaching their goals, and they were eventually going to start being able to sell some of their animals as show quality animals, okay? Things like that, okay? Again, we just don't want it to be that really, I don't want to call it lazy, but it's kind of that it showed how hard I worked. Because if you see like 25 different boxes that say it showed how hard I worked, I'm going to start thinking that you really don't necessarily care about those awards, or you ran out of time putting your record book together, you know? Okay. Do y'all have any questions about the recognition and award section? All right. We're getting close to the end, I promise. For the non-4-H activity section, this is going to be where all of your outside 4-H activities go, okay? So if you are active in your church, your school activities, if you're super into FFA, if you're into community groups, if you're into community service groups that are not connected with 4-H, okay? All of those things would go here, okay? Again, you are going to include the current year and up to 3 of the previous years if you're an intermediate or senior, and up to 2 of the previous years if you're a junior, okay? You only have 1 blank page to add all of these pieces of information there, so you want to be creative in how you are organizing it. Most people are going to use bullet points or tables, okay? And there's a couple of different ways that you can do it. You can either organize it by group Okay, so if you do school activities, you would list school activities, your church activities, and then whatever other community organizations you're doing, and then list your accomplishments and activities underneath each of those groups. Or you can kind of organize it by, here's what I did leadership wise, and then all of the activities that you did throughout there. You can organize it by community service activities, and then all the community service you did with the other groups. And then cool recognitions and things like that, or awards and recognitions, and then list out the cool recognitions that you've done in those other groups. Okay. Your same formatting for section 1 and your 4-H project experience is kind of going to apply. Okay. Most of the time people are going to show off like their activities, then their leadership, then community service, then recognition. Usually I think that's an easier starting point. I don't have an example to show y'all on that. I'll have to try and find one for y'all. But that way, you know, if you're super into, I don't know, if you're Mason associated, the DMLA or International Order of the Rainbow for Girls, if you did anything with like the Boys and Girls Club, if you did anything with your youth group, if you did anything with FFA, you're super into chess club, all of those things can be listed here. If you are showing livestock and you are a member of any of those breed associations or specific stock associations and things like that, then all of those would also count here, okay? Specifically in some of your leadership and other activities, okay? All right, and then your last section would be your college and career exploration. So this again is a kind of a pre-formatted table. The biggest thing to remember is right up here, they have this really convenient thing that's easy to overlook because it's kind of hidden at the top of the text. But basically, as of today, what career would you choose? Your 4-H members need to make sure that whatever career or whatever they want to be when they grow up right now as they're completing their record book is completed, okay? So I know we've got a couple of juniors that are, you know, wanting to be race car drivers. If they want to be a race car driver today, then you would put race car driver, okay? So this section is going to specifically focus on some of the activities that you are doing that help you decide what you want to do in your future when you graduate high school, okay? So again, we want to focus on, you know, what year you did it, a general activity title that makes it obvious what you did, and then what you actually learned or did that is helping you in this self-discovery of what you want to do post-high school, okay? So again, juniors have a maximum of 10 entries, 1 page. Intermediates, 15 entries in 1 page. Seniors have a maximum of 15 entries in 2 pages, okay? They're going to focus on that quality description. Again, make sure that you don't miss that career choice, and then focus on those activities that help you. Some examples might be if you attended a professional presentation that focused on careers or college selection. You could do interviews for anyone if you interviewed anyone in a specific industry. If you went on school tours, so college tours, anything like that. It could be facility tours if you're looking at specific industries again. If you job shadowed, researched on your own. If you talk to your school counselor, guidance counselor, teacher, club manager, specific person in a career field that you're interested in, your county extension agent, your ag teacher, whatever, all of those count, okay? Any specific work experience that you have, skill development courses, specific coursework, if you're taking courses in high school that focus on those, all count here, okay? The biggest thing is just making sure you have a description. So if you went on like a college campus tour, then it might be, you know, school tour of Charleston State University. And then you would specifically mention, you know, we went on a general tour to see the campus layout, to see how it felt. We specifically talked to, you know, Professor X in the whatever dairy judging department, things like that, okay? But something that showed, you know, what learning and what you were actually doing on that school tour, not just we toured the school. Okay. It might be, you know, you learned about scholarship opportunities, you learned about specific programs that are offered there. If you are talking about researching a specific or interviewing someone in a specific field or industry, maybe you learned about the different types of jobs, the different types of degrees that would be considered a good starting place to be able to start those jobs. You can talk to, if you're interviewing someone, ask them, if you could go back in time, or they had some of these degree programs that are offered now, what would you have changed to get where you are, or would you have altered your career path, things like that, okay? But you want to make sure that you're adding, we specifically investigated, alternative career paths, alternative education paths, to get towards this ultimate career that I want to pursue, okay? All right, do y'all have any questions about the college and career exploration or the non-4-H activity sections? Okay, so for general formatting tips and guidelines, the big change over the past couple of years is we do not include any of your old report forms, okay? So whenever you get ready to print out your record book and your 4-H story and assemble everything together, you want to make sure that you pull all the old forms out, okay? Because we've already summarized the past 2 to 3 years plus this year in our form. So we just have that one to focus on showing our growth from year to year, okay? As you are reading through your story and your record book, you want to make sure that you are actually showing how you've grown, what changes and different accomplishments have happened in those project areas from year to year. We want to make sure, again, that we have double spaced and used at least 10-point font or handwritten things legibly, okay? Making sure that if you have a freestyle or kind of blank section, no matter how you choose to include your information, you just want to make sure that it's easy to read and understand, and it's easy to see that project growth. You want to recruit people, whether it's your English teacher, club manager, whoever, just basically find a volunteer to help you check for punctuation and grammar, especially if that's not something that you're comfortable with, okay? The other thing is we want to make sure that we print our record books one-sided. That specific rule is not specifically addressed in the family guidebook, okay? But I know a couple of people who have kind of been dinged in it if it's not specifically addressed in your record book why you chose to print it two-sided. So for instance, there's a young lady who has a natural resources project, and their specific family really focuses on minimizing waste and increasing recycling and things like that. So they specifically mentioned, we know we're not supposed to, but we chose to print it one-sided to conserve paper and ink and things like that, okay? Margins are pretty flexible. You can play around with the margins on your document and everything. The biggest thing is the left margin has to be 1.5 inches just for binding purposes to make sure that whenever you're putting them in those official 4-H record books, they are not covering any of the text or pictures that you've worked really hard to include, okay? The rest of them can be between 1/2 to 1 inch, okay? So the top, bottom, and then right-hand margin can be 1/2 to 1 inch, okay? You're not allowed to include sheet protectors or dividers. And then you are encouraged to decorate your story and photo portfolio section using stickers, cutouts, clip arts, colored ink, whatever. The big thing there is you just cannot glue the specific typing paper onto construction paper. Just because in the past they've had some issues with sometimes that glue doesn't stick well, or it dries up funky and didn't have enough contact points. So they've actually lost the typing paper that had the 4-H story and photo portfolio on it, but we're left with the construction paper behind, okay? And then it specifically mentions you can use black or colored fonts throughout the record book. The big thing is just making sure whenever you use those colored fonts, make sure that they are still easy to read. And it's not like a really, light yellow or light orange text that's going to be difficult for some people to see, or if they have color blindness, things like that, okay? Whenever we are getting ready to evaluate record books, typically at the county and sometimes the district level, they are going to use this record book score sheet form as a general guiding factor. I think most of our counties really try hard to include lots of sticky notes with direct feedback so you can see, specifically where they're talking about that specific change that needs to be made in your record book. Okay. At the state level, we are limited to only providing feedback on this sheet. Okay, and it's typically a front back sheet. The judges typically just get these little bulleted lists of things to look for in the report forms and everything. I highly encourage y'all, once y'all kind of find a stopping point with your record book or are feeling stuck, kind of go through these bullet points and use them as a checklist to make sure that you've got each of those items. For instance, in the 4-H story and photo portfolio, it mentions, personal family background, whether your projects and goals are outlined, your 4-H activity highlights, experiences, leadership and citizenship highlights. You have future 4-H plans and goals. You've got quality photos included. You follow the guidelines, so you remember to check that. Grammar, punctuation, spelling, organization, and overall quality. Okay, so use that kind of as a checklist. Most of the time, we try and provide as much constructive feedback as possible. Unfortunately, you may occasionally encounter some of those judges that give you just the general good job. Okay. So if that happens, try and work with your county agents or club managers or somebody else in that project area who's done a record book before, has some experience to kind of help you with addressing some of those factors or finding some different areas of improvement. Okay. And I've got kind of an example of some of the help text that I provide to our judges that I'll also send to y'all, just as kind of an additional point to look for in each of those sections. Okay. When we're evaluating record books, the big thing to remember is judges can only look at what is submitted in that record book. Okay. And I've experienced this a couple of times with kids from other counties that I work with on occasion or see frequently and know what they've been doing in their project. If you did not include something in your project, even if I know you and know that you've done way more in-depth stuff, I can't count that towards your record book during the judging. I can only count what you submitted. Okay, so if you forgot something major, I can't count that for you. Okay, and you might get some comments to that effect on your judging sheets when you get them back. Okay, typically judges are looking for overall quality of content. As you're working through your 4-H projects, did you actually keep some records? Did you actually keep track of your goals? Are you adjusting your project over time? Are you really excited about your project? Okay. They're looking for, certain amount of details and involvement included in relation to how long you've actually been a member of 4-H. So if you are a, freshman in high school and you've been a member of 4-H since you were born, they're probably going to be looking for a little bit more in-depth involvement and information. They're going to be actively looking for you in those leadership positions and those club officer positions. Are you active in community service? And are you actively participating in your 4-H projects? Okay. Again, typically county judging, they're going to use sticky notes and forms to give y'all as much direct feedback as possible. And then district and state judging are typically going to use the forms. Okay. For those seniors who place first at the state level with their 4-H record books, they are going to have an opportunity to resubmit those books in that same category in future years. Okay, so you can still stay in that same category from year to year after you've won it. And then you also earn the opportunity to attend the Texas 4-H Leadership Conference that's typically held over Thanksgiving break. They have kind of a cool trip where they get to go to our nation's capital and visit Washington, D.C., and tour a few of the national 4-H centers and some of the cool things over there. Typically, the cost of that trip is going to be somewhere between $1,500 and $1,750 for the 4-H member. Okay. For record books and scholarships, so for county 4-H awards, most of the time, no matter what award you are applying for, both in and outside of 4-H, your record book is going to help you kind of keep track with some of your experiences and be able to put together some of that information for those awards. I know Lee County requires record books for several of their awards. Typically, they're Star Awards, the I Dare You, and then the Senior Awards. Okay. I'm not sure if y'all are still doing the district TIA, but the Texas Extension Educators Association can select one applicant per county that's then submitted to the district for an additional scholarship. Your record book is your application. Basically, you have to have submitted a record book during your 11th grade year in order to submit your record book as your application during your senior year of high school. Okay. And then this is extremely helpful in matching information for the Apply Texas forms for college applications. I know, especially for the community service and leadership and other involvements, some of your rewards and recognitions are all very much a copy paste situation into the Apply Texas. Most of our graduating senior moms have been very appreciative of that when the time comes for it. It is also incredibly helpful in completing your Texas 4-H Foundation scholarship if you are applying for that your graduating year of high school. Okay. Your leadership section, your community service section, your outside of 4-H section, and typically your awards and recognition section are all copy paste for that application. So it's already done for you. You just have to keep up with it your senior year of high school to be able to apply for that. And then your 4-H project experience, even you have to condense it a little bit for the 4-H Foundation scholarship. But if you have kept up with that information, you already have kind of half of the work done for you. Okay. There's a couple of additional narratives that you might need help with. But again, your record book is a great starting place. If you've kept up with it, it is going to make your life so much easier your senior year of high school. Okay. All right. I know that was a lot of information to throw at y'all. Do y'all have any questions so far?
Hello, I'm here now.
Hi, Jerry.
Hello. I got the tail end of that. We don't have any questions here. Do y'all have any questions? Okay. If they do, I'll know where to find you.
Absolutely. And I'll send out, yes, Erica asked if they'll have access to the PowerPoint. Yes, I'm going to save it as a PDF with extra large slides and everything. So I'll send that out to Jerry and send that to y'all. I'll save this recording, and then I'll also send y'all copies of the forms and other resources that we talked about as well. Absolutely.
Okay. Give me like 10 minutes and then I'll jump on our other meeting.
Okay, perfect. All right. Thanks so much, y'all. I really appreciate your time. Let me know if y'all have any questions at any point. Okay.
Thank you.